Mr. Chairman, there's a lot of talk about hiking and expanding unemployment benefits, but many people watching this morning who think they qualify are still waiting for the money or even to file. How long will they have to wait to see real dollars go into their bank accounts?
Well, the decision as it related to the single filer under $75,000 a year, many of those individuals, if they have tax ID numbers and they have direct deposit, those checks should be arriving just about now. 80 million checks were mailed last week. On the unemployment front, understand that that is a state and federal joint responsibility. So while the federal government has provided, I think, again, a very decent infusion of money into the unemployment account, understanding that people will qualify up until July, but if they still can't go back to work, there's an additional 13 weeks, coupled with the fact that on top of that benefit that they would receive from the state, there is a $600 benefit that will come from the federal government. We are fully aware of the idea that people need to be able to maintain the sustenance of daily life and carefully understand as well that these individuals will depend on this lifeline for coming weeks.
Mr. Chairman, the political elephant in just about every home right now is when will the country begin opening up? President Trump offered some guidelines this past week, but from where you sit, and I know this is a really difficult question, when do you think things will be relatively normal again? I mean, I'm asking you more based on your gut reaction on what you know right this very minute.
Well, I'm a big fan of Anthony Fauci, and I think that as he has laid out a plan in the last 48 hours about not including social distancing as we go forward, but sort of a staggered recovery. Right now, there are individuals by the tens of thousands who have been able to work from home, but there are a lot of people who can't work from home. And I think that taking that into consideration is going to be important. There are still hot spots across the country. I have a chance every day to go back and forth with Governor Baker, members of his staff, and secretaries, speaker. And I must tell you that I think that right now we want to make sure that, first of all, we have successfully dealt with the contagion that the coronavirus has offered before we encourage people to do something that's reckless.
Not very likely to happen until June. Is that what you're saying?
I think that many of the states here on the East Coast, they've suggested that until May 14th at least. I think that probably is a reasonable number, but you can see already that some states, for better or for worse, I think they've taken it upon themselves, as President Trump suggested, that they were responsible to begin a bit of a rollout. I hope that it is not cataclysmic.
I wanted to ask you before we step aside, sir, about remote voting. It's a big question for voters this fall, but I want to ask you specifically about your job, because House members voting on some of those big ticket money bills right now, you're scheduled to be back on May 4th. Do you think that's going to happen, or do you think remote voting for you, for example, is more likely?
Well, in the next 48 hours, there's this arcane procedure. And the arcane procedure means that if nobody objects, these two major pieces of legislation will be married and passed. And then I think that we should gauge very carefully going back. I could drive to Washington from here. It's about 6 hours. I was prepared to do that the last time. I'm an institutionalist, and everybody who's dealt with me, you know that. So I think that remote voting is going to have to be something that we consider going forward. But I also think that being in Washington and on the House floor as best we can, perhaps again staggering the membership as they go in, that's the way to proceed. But remote voting is something we're going to have to fully now examine, if not embrace.
Mr. Chairman, thank you so much for your time. We do hope you continue to be well, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Be well.